Welcome back to week 10 of English 101 Rhetoric 1. This is our rhetoric and writing lecture for this week, and we're going to talk about two things. First, we're going to talk about some words that are misused, often, commonly misused, meaning it happens all the time, so nothing to be ashamed of or anything, but just things that are easy to misuse because they're so easy to confuse them, and so we'll talk about those. And then also we're going to review methods of persuasion. I know we've talked about this, but I wanted to give a practical example from a paragraph, and I hope you won't feel like I'm preaching to you, because it does sound a little bit like something you might hear in a driver's ed class, and that's not my intention. It's just that this is a paragraph that we're going to look at that does have to do with drunk driving and the perils of that, but it's really just a very persuasive paragraph, and it's hard sometimes to find, or at least it was for me, to find a paragraph that has, short enough, just a few sentences that we can look at, but has all the methods of those 5 methods that we've talked about so far. So let's get into this, and we'll try to make it fairly brief. And again, first thing I want to talk about is commonly misused words. And again, commonly is the operative word here, meaning they are often misused. That's why I'm talking about them. They're not misspelled words, so they're misused. There's a difference, because obviously, but if they're misspelled words, probably if you were using something like Grammarly, for sure it would pick it up, or even Microsoft Word or Google spell checkers. But they're not misspelled, they're just misused. So spell checker and all that's not going to help. And grammar checker is not going to help either, because they're not grammatically wrong. Usually they're just the wrong word. So let's look at a few. And what I'd like you to do, I'm going to go through these pretty quick. But and if there is a rule, I'll share that with you as we go through them. But if not, I'll just say that this is the correct answer. And what I recommend is we're going to look at 30 of these. So if you could if you're watching this video, pause it. See if you could if you want to note it down on a piece of paper or type it into your computer or phone, and just choose the correct word. There's going to be 2 or 3 choices in each one. What do you think is the correct word? So again, I'm gonna just sort of stop talking just to give you a second in a minute here, and if you can pause and just see if you can choose the correct one, then I'll tell you the answers. It'll be more interesting if you do it that way. If not, that's fine too, if you want to just follow along. But all right, so I give it a second, and then I'll keep going. Like, if you did pause and you're back, that's great. If not, that's fine too. The rich dessert affected my appetite. Very commonly misused, because one of these is a verb and one is a noun. So the one that begins with an A would be the correct choice, because that's acting as a verb. It affected me. So anytime I use a verb as an action, usually, right? The other one is a noun, effect. So we wouldn't really say affected. We could say it had an effect on me, but we wouldn't say affected. We'd say affected as a verb. So that's the rule there. This one, when it's used as a verb, an action, usually it's going to be an A if it's a noun. So again, if I said something like, oh, that medicine had a bad effect, that's different, because we're talking about it as a thing. But if we say the medicine affected me, that's a verb. So that's A. So this one, again, first one is correct. Second one, already went to the store. The first one. The second one is like completely ready. This is just, it happened in the past already. So that's our correct choice. He was very happy to accept the award. And it's A with an A. Accept with an E is like an exception, something outside the ordinary, or exceptional, something better than average, could be exceptional. But accept is to receive something like a gift or an award. The woman was wearing a or an red skirt. This one has a rule. You might not remember, because most of us learned this rule probably in elementary school or middle school, but we just forget, and we do it by ear mostly. But there is a rule behind it, and you might be already in your head saying, yeah, I know this. There's a rule. It's vowel and consonant. So if you know, vowels are A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y, and consonants are everything else, every other letter. So this begins with a consonant, right? So we would say the woman was wearing a red skirt. Again, you might just do that by ear. You might not be thinking about the rule, but for people who's, especially if your first language is not English, you don't hear that clearly, and so it's good to know the rule. So again, the woman was wearing a red skirt because we have the consonant sound. I was eating apple, an apple, right? Because it starts with a vowel sound. And make sure you always know it's the sound. If you have trouble with this ever, it's always the sound, not the actual letter, because we have in English, as with most languages, we have silent letters, right? So the word hour, not like, but the clock, like 9 o'clock, the hour, right? It starts with an H, but but the sound is O, right? So we're going to say in an hour because it's a vowel sound. Doesn't matter how it's spelled, it's that first sound. Everyone should be allowed to speak about the government, about permission. This one, if you notice, if you take off the A, you have the word loud. And this is just speaking. Hopefully you can hear me right now. If you're watching this, I'm speaking aloud. But this one, the first one, is about permission. He sent a big box of chocolates to his girlfriend. And again, it's the first one. To send someone, like sending a letter. This is like century, it's 100, or cents, like pennies, right? And smell. Please close the door. The first one is clothing that you wear, and the second one is the correct one. This is the correct one. Close the door. I shouldn't have, but I had 2 desserts. There's no rule for this, but I have what's called a mnemonic. Mnemonic device is something that helps you remember things. And I don't have a great memory, so I need lots of mnemonics to help me. But dessert is something I enjoy. It has 2 S's. I always have 2 helpings of dessert because I enjoy it so much. So that's how I remember it. 2 S's, 2 helpings. This is the word desert, like a very dry place, like where I used to live in New Mexico. And then this one, again, 2 S's, 2 helpings for dessert. He wants to start a business, but he doesn't have enough capital. Very strange rule for this first one. The correct one is the second one. Capital is another way of saying money. It can also be a state capital, right? But it's also a way of saying money. This one with an O is very weird because the only time you use that is if you're talking about the actual physical building, not even the place, right? Like the capital of the United States is Washington, D.C., but the Capitol building, that amazing white dome that a lot of state capitals have something similar, that building is spelled with an O. But if we're talking about money or we're talking about a place, it's with an A. He drove further or farther than she did. Most people generally for this in class, when we do this, they choose further because it just sounds better, I think, to most people. It sounds a little more Englishy, a little more academic. But actually, the second one is correct. And the reason why is anytime we're dealing with physical distance from one place to another, it's 10 miles, it's 20 miles, it's 100 yards, whatever. We're dealing with physical distance. We're going to use the one that begins with the word far, farther, because that's distance. Further, we use whenever we're talking about going to an extent. So you might hear people say, oh, I went back to school to further, not farther, my education, right? To fully, develop my education or go further. So it's doing something to more of an extent. I was exercising once a week, but I upped it to 2 times a week so I could further, improve something like that, right? But it's more of doing something to more of an extent. Dealing with physical distance, you're always going to look for that word far, farther. So that's all right. Again, if you want to pause this and see if you can just quiz yourself, see if you can choose the correct one. I'll give you a second just to pause it and I'll go over these. And we have 30, so we have 3 screens of these. I know it's a lot, but these are often obviously commonly misused. So, all right. If you did or did not pause, we will keep going. This first one has a very clear rule, and it's a rule called countable and non-countable nouns, right? Some things are countable, right? If I have a bunch of books, which I do, I have a shelf right in front of me here, and I could count them, right? So I could say there, and I took this one off the shelf. Would I say that there are fewer books on my shelf or there are less books on my shelf? Well, I would say there are fewer because I can count it. And countable things, we usually say fewer because it's a number, right? Less is I have a mug of water. I promise it's just water, even though it's a Sunday. I'm not drinking anything special here, but it's just when I started, it was up here. Now it's down here. There's less water here. It's non-countable. You can't count the amount. You could count ounces and if I had lots of mugs, then you could be fewer. But anyway, so something that's countable, we're going to say fewer. So there are fewer cars in the parking lot, not less cars in the parking lot. Again, commonly misused. It doesn't mean it's terrible. If you say that in everyday conversation, nobody will probably care. But when you're doing academic writing, it's one of those things that you want to avoid, like all these. Did you hear that noise outside? So if we take the H off of this, we have the word ear, which is to hear, and then the second one is correct. Here, I didn't maybe mention, but fewer. Second one was correct. Second one's correct here. And then the first one's a preposition. That's just a place, right? Are you here? There's a hole in your sweater. First one. Second one is complete. Please send me a letter through the regular mail. One is a female mail and one is male, right? Second one is correct, like the U.S. mail. He is a minor, so he shouldn't be served alcohol. So the second one is like somebody who digs in the earth for coal or gold or something like diamonds. And this one is a young person under the age of 18, right? Or under the age of 21, I guess, for alcohol, so minor. In the last few years, many people have begun to wonder if there will ever be peace in the world. And it's the first one, right? Peace. This is like part of something. I ate one large, juicy, delicious pear. They all sound the same, but they're all very different. The middle one is the correct one, a kind of fruit. This is like a pair of socks, and this is sort of like shrinking something down, paring it down, right? So she's the principal of the school. I have a mnemonic device again for this one. So principal, the first one's correct. I'm sorry, the second one's correct. And the way that I remember that is when I was in school, I said I was in quite a bit of trouble a lot of times in high school, and I got to know the principal pretty well. So they became my pal, right? Principal. That's the person who runs the school. Principal, the first one, you probably know, is like a belief in something, right? Or an attitude or something like that, right? We have a principle that liberty and justice and democracy, these kinds of things that we hear about, right? Are principles, beliefs. Second one is the one who runs school, so that's the correct one. He was in love at first sight. And that is the last one, sight, like seeing something, right? This is a job site, and this is to cite, like cite your sources or a traffic citation, something like that. The woman's son came to visit her. So yeah, it's the second one. The first one is the sun in the sky, but still can be easily confused. Last one here, we have 30, like I said. So again, if you want to pause this and take a minute and see how you do, go ahead and pause me and then come back. I'll give you a 1, 2, 3 count there. No. So if you did or did not pause, either way, if you're still here, these last 10. The Petronas Towers in Malaysia are taller than, I guess we should say, the Willis Tower, the Sears Tower in Chicago. So comparative, THAN. THEN sounds almost the same. I think some people say it differently. Probably depends on where you grew up and whatnot, right? Like then, I don't know. But to me, it sounds almost the same. And then is talking about time, obviously. Then we did this, then we went here. Then is when we're comparing two things. So the towers are taller than the ones in Chicago. So that's correct as second one. Please don't waste any more food. And that is the first one, right? This one is your part of your body. If I lose 5 more pounds, I will be at my ideal weight. So this is the first one that has to do with pounds and ounces. And then this one is waiting for somebody, who's delayed or something. She's very or very. So very is a lot. And then VARY, vary, is to be have variety. So it's some difference, like varied sorts of food or varied sorts of people or something, right? But difference. This is the correct one. The first one, which means a lot, or yeah. Please wear a hard hat in this area. First one. Second one has to do with wares, like things that you might have, like silverware, and cutlery and stuff like that. But this was the correct one. Who's going to leave camp and go for help? This one has a rule involved because what you have here is what's called a contraction. We know that one letter is missing. That's why this apostrophe is here. And it literally means who is when we see that. There's an I missing. So if you're ever in doubt, this is the correct answer this is the correct answer, by the way. But this is a possessive pronoun, or whose. So it's kind of like, whose car is that? So if you're ever in doubt and you want to decide, just put the letter back in and read it. Who is going to leave camp and go for help? That makes sense, right? Whose is a possessive, like whose car is this going to leave? And that doesn't make sense. So the correct choice is this. And like I said, I'll always tell you when I know a rule and there's a contraction here. We're missing a letter. We add that letter in. It can help us decide if we have the correct one. The new house was constructed entirely of wood. This is the building material, wood from a tree, right? And this is a modal verb, like would you, could you, should you, that kind of thing. So this is our correct answer. Please come to class today to pick up your portfolio. Remember up here where we had the contraction, we want to put in the letter, and we know that the letter A is missing. So this is literally saying you are. Please come to class today to pick up you are portfolio. Doesn't sound right. This one is a possessive pronoun. That's the portfolio that you own. your portfolio. So that is what we choose the second one. The question the detective had was, why did he steal the radio? So if anybody is a Pittsburgh NFL football fan, Pittsburgh Steelers, it's spelled with EE because that's like a metal, right? And in Pittsburgh, they used to be a steel town. They used to make lots and lots of metal there, lots of steel mills. So they were the Steelers, not the Steelers, like stealing things like the bandits or something, right? So the correct answer is this one. Why did he steal? Why did he take the radio? And again, this is a metal. The laser shot out tiny rays of light. So we have rays, rays, the second one. This one is to like level something, like raising a building, like knocking it down. And this is to lift something up, to raise your hand, for example, right? All right, so that is a lot. We're going to cover one more thing. This is a long video this week, but the other ones were fairly short, so hopefully you can stick with me. We're going to talk a real quick review. Well, it won't be that quick, but I'll keep it as quick as I can on methods of persuasion. We've talked about these 5 methods of persuasion, and you might remember, persuading is just to convince someone that a particular opinion or point of view is the correct one. If you argue with a friend, you're each trying to persuade or convince each other. Television commercials, any kind of advertising is a form of persuasion. You often have to persuade in writing because it's part of what we do in college writing a lot, not only in English classes, but sometimes in other classes too. And of course, obviously, being able to persuade logically, you're less likely to also accept false, misleading, or emotional arguments. So that's one of the things I think is most important part of critical thinking, right? The more you understand how to argue logically, the more you can recognize when somebody's not being logical, and you can assume they don't have a very good point then. And so, again, persuasion is something we can use it in daily life, but it's something we use in most college courses and in lots of careers it comes up as well. So let's look real quickly at these 5. You remember we've talked about these. If you want to pause this and read through these again before we go through the examples, you can. But these are the things that we've sort of talked about as being, I think these are, obviously there's many methods of persuasion, but these are 5 that come up a lot. And I think they're easy to use and easy to understand and can be very useful. So that's why I focused on these 5 for our class. All right, so again, if you want to take a minute to read this paragraph, I'm going to put a paragraph on the screen. It's a little hard to see. I know try to get myself out of the way there. It's a persuasive paragraph, very persuasive. It has a clear, it's almost like a mini essay. It's got so much persuasion in here. But what I'd like you to do is, if you can, read through this and see if you can find all 5 methods. Remember, facts, examples, predicting the consequences, referring to an authority, and answering the opposition. Can you find all 5 of those in here? So again, if you want to pause it and take a minute, read through this carefully, and if not, we'll just start going through the examples. All right, so let's do that. And again, if you did pause, that's great. If not, either way, I'll show you the. So what was the first reason predicts the consequences. If passengers refuse to ride with drinkers, what will the consequences be? So if we look at this, passengers should refuse to ride with any vehicle driven by someone who has been drinking. First and most important, such a refusal could save lives. That's predicting the consequences. And that's, fairly persuasive, right? Doing this could save your life. That's maybe one of the most persuasive things someone could say to me anyway. All right. Maybe I'll give you a lot of money and it will save your life. That would be the only thing that would make it better. Okay, just kidding. The writer also supports the first reason with facts. What are the facts? So let's, this is just an example, right? It's interesting to me, like the U.S. is way ahead of, and that's not a thing we want to be good at, right? These are motor vehicle crash deaths. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be making light of that. That's a very serious topic, but I'm just saying, when you look at us compared to lots of other developed countries, we're way up there, almost double most of these other countries, or double in some cases. All right, so the writer gives some facts, and if you go back, we can look. 25,000 deaths and 50% of all traffic accidents. This is a fairly recent. I mean, I don't know how recent. This is probably a few years ago. I got this from another textbook, but still, even if it's a little better, I doubt it's that much different just in a few years. So, 25,000 deaths and 50% of all traffic accidents had to do with drunk driving. Can you believe that? 50%. That's half. I know. I'm really great at math, right? Sorry. But yeah, 50%. So, I mean, that was almost like a shocking thing to me to think that half of traffic accidents had to do with that. So that's a fact. that they put in, and obviously that's very persuasive. As you can see, it affects me. I'm thinking, wow, that's crazy. That's just so much. So very persuasive. Answering the opposition. The second reason in the paragraph is an answer to the opposition. So what point is the writer answering? So if we go back to it, let's look at this. Not only drivers, but passengers who agree. Writers might tell, so second, right? Here's our second main point. There's a lot up here with these facts, and then also predicting the consequences. And then second, writers might tell themselves that some people drive well even after a few drinks, but this is just not true. So we're answering the opposition, and what we're going to do is they're going to combine a couple of things. They say Dr. Burton Bellick. Now, he's not just any doctor of the local alcoholism treatment center. So he works with alcoholics. He works with people who have probably had DUIs and all kinds. So he sees this. So his specialization, that's what makes him a great authority and a good source. Just any random doctor. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a medical professional being a source for your paper, but it's not really so much a medical topic as it is this topic of drunk driving. So he's a great reference to an authority. So we kind of do two things there. We answer the opposition. We say, yeah, some people say they might drive better, but you know what, Dr. Burton Bellick, I don't agree with you, and I'll back it up with what we call referring to an authority, right? So there's Dr. Bellick. That's not really him. I think he's a made-up person. I don't know. He might not be made up, but I don't. Anyway, that's not him as far as I know. That's just a random photo of a doctor from the internet. The writer supports the second reason by referring to an authority. Who's the authority? And we just talked about that, Dr. Burton Bellick. And this person says, let's go back and see what Dr. Burton Bellick says. He explains that even one drink, just one drink, can lengthen the reflex time and weaken the judgment needed for safe driving. So we have a answer to the opposition. People say they drive better, maybe after a few drinks, or just as well. Not true. Not just me saying it's not true, but Dr. Burton Bellick, who's an expert in this area, says it's not true. And he talks about the reflex time that weakens judgment needed for safe driving. So that is several methods of persuasion already. Let's go a little bit further here. And then we also have answering the opposition. The third reasoning in the argument is risking your life. They're saying risking your life is foolish, right? So that's really an answer to the opposition. What point is the writer answering? So let's go back. Oops. Other writers might feel foolish to ruin a social occasion or inconvenience themselves or others by speaking up, but risking their lives is even more foolish. So answering the opposition is, oh, I feel kind of embarrassed to say anything about this, but then it's more foolish to risk your life, according to this method of persuasion. All right, well, let's see what else we've got here. So that's got most of our methods covered. And then the final reason in the argument is that one passenger could influence others. What example does the writer supply to back up this reason? So if we go back, we can see down here, Marie Ferrio, a student at Central High School, is an example. So we have an example, one person. When three friends who had obviously been drinking offered her a ride home from school, she refused, despite the driver's teasing. Hearing Marie's refusal, two of her friends got out of the car. So there we have like one person does it and the other two friends follow her. So that's an example of how one person actually might influence another person. So, all right, so that was that paragraph. And again, sorry if I feel like I'm preaching at you. I'm not a driver's ed teacher talking about drunk driving, but it's just a very persuasive paragraph. They used all 5 methods. I want to see if you can find, again, if you want to pause these, we'll go through a few slides here and see if you can choose a reason that would support each topic sentence using the method of persuasion that's indicated on the slide. So let's look at each one. All right, the first one here, it's asking you to choose a fact that would support. Now imagine you're writing a paragraph or even a paper, and we talked about this maybe before, but this idea of you should read the fine print on credit card applications. So you're applying for a credit card, you want to read what it says really carefully. So which of these facts, and again, if you want to pause it, and then I'll tell you in just a second, which of these facts would best support that? The annual percentage rate is normally included on credit card applications. You know, it's the APR that tells you how much interest you're going to pay every year if you keep a balance. The credit card companies will do anything to get more of your money, even lie. Yeah, I think B doesn't sound right. And I hear just a sort of almost like a logical fallacy, or it's a little too emotional. But this one is just a fact, right? That we could probably verify. This would be hard to verify. We have to do some serious research. Seems more like an opinion to me than a fact, really. but A is the correct choice here, I think, because that APR is valuable information to know about when you're signing up for a credit card, knowing how much you're going to pay in interest if you run a balance. All right. This is a title or topic we're looking at is people should not get married. So imagine you're writing a persuasive essay and you're trying to convince people that getting married after 25 is better, when you're a little older and more mature. And here are two facts, or what might be facts that you have to choose. So see which one you might choose, A or B. My cousin Vinny got married when he was 21. He's divorced now. Just one person. A recent study of men who married before 25 years of age showed that nearly 50% of study participants were now divorced. So, okay, we don't know how many, but we know it's more than once, more than Vinny. So probably B is a better example, right? And if we had this study, we could look at that. But that's just showing that if you can generalize your facts to maybe a group or even 2 or 3 people would be better than just one. All right. This is, you might be trying to get, business students should learn a second language. So you're writing a paper or a paragraph and you really think students who are studying business, particularly business, should learn a second language since they're probably going to be dealing with people from other countries and whatnot. So first we have Dr. Cecilia Marquez of Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management said bilingual graduates often have an edge in the job market. So Northwestern's business school is prestigious, very well known. She's in an MBA program, it sounds like, as a faculty member. So she sees lots of people graduating and going to work in business. And she says a lot of the graduates who are bilingual have an edge in the job market. Randall Forsyth, hedge fund manager and entrepreneur, says he doesn't see any reason why he should be forced to learn another language. So there's somebody who works in business, is an entrepreneur, meaning they work kind of for themselves on their own, and he doesn't think it's a good idea. So again, you're trying to support this though. So if you have someone that disagrees, you might answer the opposition, but you probably want to choose A, Dr. Cecilia Marquez, because she's supporting your idea, and she's also somebody who would know a lot about people who study business getting jobs in the industries. So that one would be A, I think would be a good choice. All right, this is you're trying to get people to do at least 1 hour of vigorous exercise 3 times a week. I didn't do that this week. Maybe next week. So refer to an authority. Some studies done at the University of New South Wales, and I believe that's in Australia, show the moods of koala bears improve with vigorous exercise. Koala bears benefit from exercise. Dr. Felicia Smith, a cardiologist, meaning heart doctor, right? The heart doctor urges her patients to exercise several times a week. So I think for me, koalas are nice, but I don't know if we can say for sure that just because exercise benefits koalas, it's going to benefit me. So I'm going to go with Dr. Felicia Smith. And she's also a heart doctor, and I want my heart to be healthy, and I'm going to listen to her. Okay, so that's my reference to an authority, right? And we're just looking at how some of these can look okay, but there's always probably a better choice for your reference to an authority. Examples. So we want to have pets should be allowed in children's hospital rooms because they speed healing. So this first example, when St. John's Hospital allowed pets to be brought to children's hospital rooms, they were surprised to receive more than 50 letters from parents and children thanking them. And then letter B, some children with allergies could be negatively affected by cats and dogs being allowed in hospital rooms. So there's nothing wrong with letter B. It's valid. But if your point is you're trying to argue for, you obviously want something that agrees with you. This might be a chance to answer the opposition, right? Where you say, I know some children can be affected negatively, but look, we've had so much positive response from children and their parents that we're going to continue this policy of bringing pets into children's hospital rooms. All right. The health department should inspect local restaurants more rigorously. So we want them to inspect more rigorously. Last week I found a fly in my soup at Jenny's restaurant. One person, me, sounds like me just trying to get a free meal. Our community has seen a 15% increase in reported cases of food poisoning over the last, okay, so this seems pretty serious. That seems like a very good example. This seems like just one person, could be true, kind of anecdotal. So 15% increase in reported cases over 6 months sounds pretty significant. So I'd go with B on that one. A couple more here. Companies should, I guess we could say should or should not. That might be, I think that's a typo. But I wanted to say companies, forget about that should. Companies should not be allowed to conduct random drug testing on employees dude, random drug testing is totally unfair. Okay, that might be true. And random, if you're not familiar with this, random drug testing is just the idea that the company can, without any warning, just ask you to do a drug test at, any point. So it's random in that sense, right? Without planning or schedule or anything. Random drug testing could lead to lower employee morale and even cause people to resign. So these days especially, it seems like it's so hard to fill jobs in many industries. So this could be very persuasive, the second one, because it's prediction, right? You know what, if we do random, there's nothing wrong with drug testing. Maybe we want to organize it differently. But if we do it randomly, it might actually make people feel bad. They might quit. So that would be a prediction. Again, whether you agree or disagree, I think that's a persuasive. And with all these, I don't really know. That doesn't really matter whether you agree or disagree, as long as you can recognize the persuasive qualities of each one. Answering the opposition, remember that's when you try to understand how somebody would oppose you and think of an example of how you might answer that beforehand. The college should drop its required attendance policies. This would be an essay where you're arguing for no attendance policy in college. Many people claim dropping the attendance policy will actually benefit students, but several studies have shown that colleges without mandatory attendance policies have fewer graduates. And then letter B, some people say we should not drop our attendance policy, but I believe college students are adult and they should be able to decide whether or not they need to be in class every day. So I would go with letter B. A is actually counter to what you're arguing, because it's basically saying if we don't have an attendance policy, people don't graduate on time. So I wouldn't use that one. So B would be the one that would be a good way to answer the opposition and say we should drop this attendance policy because we're adults and we can come if we want to or not. Like I said, I don't know if I agree with all these topics. I know for me, when I was in graduate school, if you told me I didn't have to be there, I don't know, my kids and work and other things might have. So I obviously have strong opinions about this one, but still B is a very good way to support that, to answer the opposition. Teenagers, I did this again, so I don't know if I was trying to give you an option, but let's go with should not. I didn't even notice that typo in class on Saturday when we were doing this. But teenagers should not be required to get their parents' permission before being allowed to get a tattoo. So, I think the law is in Illinois that if you're under 18, I think would have to get permission. Maybe it's not even allowed. Anyway, I'm not sure if this is realistic, but let's just go with it anyway. I have to look that up. So if you want to argue they shouldn't be allowed to get their parents' permission, many claim teens should be able to get tattoos without parental permission. I worry that many teens will regret this decision once they're adults. So that doesn't really support should not, right? That's sort of saying we should, I think. It's been said that teens should be required to get parental permission before getting a tattoo, but I believe this will only create an environment where teens resort to getting tattoos in illegal and unhealthy ways. So you can't get a tattoo legally without your parents' permission. So you're 18 or 19 even, you just go to some back alley tattoo place. I don't know. This argument's been used in lots of other contexts, by the way. It's a good one. In the sense that it works rhetorically. It's a good argument, because if you can't do something legally, think about the legalization of marijuana. That was a big one that I think they used the same argument for, basically saying, well, might as well be illegal. People are getting it anyway, and we could tax it then. I think that was an argument that was made. So again, this is a very persuasive argument. And if you look at like Roe versus Wade, that's an argument that was made in the case of that too, basically, right? Saying if it's legal, it's safe for both, for the mother. So again, this is a powerful argument, a good one. So B is the best choice here, I would say. And that is all we have. So lots of stuff today that we talked about on methods of persuasion. And then we also did quite a bit on these commonly misused words. And so at some point, we'll be looking at methods of persuasion again, I think. Obviously, you're going to be using it in your essay writing, and then also the commonly misused words will probably come up on a quiz in the near future. As always, let me know if you have any questions or have any concerns. Email or my office hour is the best way to do that. And I hope you have a good rest of your week.